cold evening air touches your face as you stand in the dojo courtyard. The distant mechanical clank of a steam engine drifts from the harbour, a heavy metallic pulse that doesn't belong here. It carries the faint, bitter smell of coal smoke drifting over the cedar trees and the clean scent of rain on stone. Your two swords rest against the wall. You can feel their familiar weight, even without touching them, a weight that has lived against your hip for 40 years. You reach out, your fingers finding the leather wrapping on the suka. It is worn smooth, shaped by your own hands, through thousands of hours of practice. Tomorrow, the law says you cannot wear them. Tomorrow, the edict becomes real, and the life you were trained for vanishes. But tonight, the samurai world still breathes in the cooling air. Tonight, you can still touch the steel that defined who you are. We'll walk through these final hours together. We'll sit with an aging samurai as he finishes his final training, his muscles aching with a fatigue that feels older than the day. We'll stand with a swordsmith as he watches the orange glow of his forge fade into grey ash for the last time. We'll watch a young son, caught between his father's silence and the bright, loud world calling him forward. And we'll join a tea house owner as she wipes down the low tables. The room's quiet for the first time in generations. All of you are carrying the day's exhaustion into the night. All of you are seeking a rest that marks an ending. Before we settle in, if you find comfort in these quiet journeys, subscribe and drift with us into more true stories from long ago. If there is a part of your own day you want to leave behind tonight, share it with our community below. Now let's get comfortable. Close your eyes and feel the stillness of the dojo as the light begins to fade. The dojo is a place of shadows now, the high cedar beams overhead disappearing into a darkness that smells of old wood and dried sweat. You stand in the centre of the floor, your feet bare against the polished timber. The wood is cold, a deep, biting chill that seems to pull the remaining warmth from your body, reminding you that the sun has finally dipped below the horizon. For 40 years, this room has been your sanctuary, but tonight the silence feels different. It feels heavy, like the air before a summer storm. Your knees give a small familiar creak as you settle into a low stance, the sound echoing off the empty walls. It is a quiet protest from a body that has spent the day in constant motion. You can still feel the throbbing ache in your forearms, the lingering vibration of the wooden practice sword, the bokken as it struck against your student's defences throughout the morning. Your muscles are tight, knotted with the physical residue of a life lived by the blade, and you can feel the sweat-dried fabric of your keikoji pulling against your skin as you move. You remember the sunlight as it was at noon, harsh, bright, and unforgiving. You remember the sound of 20 men breathing in unison, the sharp, rhythmic clack-clack of wood on wood that filled this space with a fierce, living energy. You were a master then, a man of authority and tradition. But as the afternoon shadows lengthened, that energy began to drain away, replaced by the quiet, creeping reality of the edict. One by one, your students bowed and left, their footsteps fading into the distance, until only the settling of the roof beams remained. Now you walk toward the far wall, where your two swords, your daisho, rest on their rack. They are the only things in this room that still catch the light, a faint silver glimmer in the deepening gloom. You reach out, your fingers finding the familiar texture of the leather-wrapped handle, the tsuka. It is worn smooth, shaped by the pressure of your own palms through thousands of hours of practice, through heat and cold, through peace and the memory of war. You pick up a small silk cloth and the small tin container of clove oil. As you open it, the scent fills the air, sharp, sweet, and medicinal. It is a fragrance that has signaled the end of every day of your adult life, a ritual of care and respect for the steel that has protected you. You begin to wipe the long blade, the katana, with slow rhythmic strokes. The steel is cold at first, but as you move the cloth, you feel it begin to warm under your touch. You follow the curve of the hamon, the tempered edge that looks like a range of mountains shrouded in mist. Each pass of the cloth is a memory. You remember the smith who forged this blade, the heat of his forge reflecting in his eyes as he hammered the folding steel. You remember the first time you wore it, the weight of it against your hip, feeling like a new limb, a promise of duty and honour. Outside, the silence is broken by the distant, mechanical clank of the steam engine at the harbour. It is a jarring, rhythmic pulse that seems to shake the very foundations of the dojo. It carries the bitter, acrid smell of coal smoke, a scent slowly replacing the natural scents of cedar and rain. It is a sound that doesn't belong in the world you knew, a sound that signals the end of the silence you have spent a lifetime cultivating. The exhaustion of the day is settling deep into your marrow now, a heavy, leaden feeling that makes every movement feel like an effort. But it is more than just physical tiredness. It is the weight of a world that is turning its back on the man you were trained to be. You look at the sword in your hand, its edge still sharp enough to split a hair, and you realise that tomorrow this steel will be a relic, a piece of history to be tucked away in a chest, hidden from a world that no longer wants to see it. You slide the blade back into its scabbard, the final click of the guard hitting the throat of the sheath echoing like a door closing. You stand there for a long moment, the scent of clove oil still clinging to your hands, caught between the life you have lived and the sleep that waits for you in the dark house beyond the courtyard. The crickets are beginning their steady, pulsing drone, a song of the night that has remained unchanged for 1,000 years. Indifferent to the edicts of emperors or the clanking of machines, you turn out the low lamp, the darkness rushing in to fill the space, and you step out of the dojo. Your feet find the familiar stones of the path, and as you walk toward your sleeping quarters, you carry the day's stories with you, ready to let them drift into the quiet of the night. Your forge has been cooling since this afternoon. You finished your final blade at sunset, when the light through the workshop window turned gold and then faded to grey. The heat still radiates from the stones when you stand close, warming your face in the evening chill. You can feel it through your clothes, through your skin, the stored warmth of a fire that burned all day. The calluses on your palms are thick and yellow, built up over 30 years of gripping hammer and tongs. Your hands look like they belong to someone older than you are. The skin rough and cracked, the fingers permanently curved from holding tools. The burn scars on your forearms tell stories if you know how to read them. The long white line from the time you misjudged the heat and grabbed metal too soon. The puckered circle from the day a coal popped and landed on bare skin while you were reaching for the quenching bucket. You spent the day folding steel, heating and hammering, the rhythm you learned from your father when you were barely tall enough to see over the anvil. He would guide your hands, showing you how to read the metal's colour and know when it was ready. The steel glowed orange first, then yellow as the heat built, and finally white when it reached the temperature at which it becomes soft enough to shape. You can read temperature by colour alone now. You don't need to test it, just watch the metal transform in the flames. Each strike of the hammer sent vibrations up your arm, into your shoulder and into your bones, with the impact felt for hours. The rhythm never changes. Heat, strike, fold, heat again. The pattern your father taught you, that his father taught him, goes back generations of smiths who knew that good steel requires patience and repetition. The blade you finished today is perfect. You can see your reflection in it, distorted and dark against the polished surface. The edge is sharp enough to split a hair. The curve is exactly right, the balance point falling precisely where it should. But no one ordered this blade. No samurai came to your workshop asking for a sword. You made it because you had to, because your hands needed to remember one more time how to create something that carries a soul. The sound of hammer on anvil rang through the workshop all day, the rhythm steady as a heartbeat. The hiss of hot metal meeting water filled the air with steam that smelled of minerals and heat. That particular scent of transformation when fire and water meet through steel. The smell of coal and iron is permanent in this space. It lives in the walls, the floor, your clothes. You could wash for hours and still smell it on your skin. Your apprentice didn't come today. He left last week to work in a factory making nails. He said the factory pays better, the hours are regular, and the work is easier on the body. All of this is true. You remember his young hands learning to fold steel, the pride in his eyes when he made his first blade, and the moment he for the first time understood that metal could hold beauty and purpose together. Now those hands will make identical nails by the thousand, each one exactly like the last. Perfect uniformity, perfect efficiency, no soul required. The forge's heat still radiates from the stones, but tomorrow it will grow cold for the first time in 3 decades. Your back aches from bending over the anvil all day, and your shoulders burn from swinging the hammer in that same arc hundreds of times. But the exhaustion is honest, earned, the price of making something with soul instead of just function. You wash the soot from your hands in the basin outside, watching the black water run clear. The cold evening air bites at your heated skin, making you shiver after hours near the fire. You walk toward your small house behind the workshop, your legs heavy with the day's work, weighed down by knowing your craft dies with your generation. You sit in your family's house, the scroll on the table between you and your father. The paper is official and crisp, and the characters are written in a formal script that makes them feel cold and final. The words are simple, but their meaning is absolute. Tomorrow, your father cannot wear his swords. Tomorrow, the samurai class officially ends. This morning you attended the new school, where they teach mathematics and English. The classroom smelled of chalk dust and new wood. The building was constructed last year in Western style, with glass windows and straight walls that felt nothing like the traditional buildings where your grandparents learned. Your teacher wore a Western suit, the fabric stiff and dark, a pocket watch chain glinting at his vest. The chain caught the light every time he moved, a small golden flash that seemed to announce the future arriving. He spoke of progress, of Japan's future among modern nations, his voice full of certainty that made you want to believe him. He drew diagrams on the blackboard, machines, engines, the architecture of the industrial world, railways that could cross the country in days instead of weeks. Factories that could produce in hours what craftsmen took months to make. A world where Japan would stand equal with the Western powers, where the old ways would be replaced by efficiency and strength. But this afternoon, your father made you practice sword forms in the courtyard. The weight of the bokken in your hands feels heavier each time you lift it. Or perhaps your arms are just tired from holding the wooden practice sword in positions that seem to serve no purpose in the world your teacher describes. The precise movements your body knows. Your father's hands have guided yours through them since you were 6 years old, correcting your stance, adjusting your grip, teaching you the discipline that defined his life. But your mind questions each stance now. What use are these movements when men carry guns instead of swords? What purpose does this training serve when the law itself says, the samurai way is finished? Your father's face is composed as he watches you practice, but you see the tightness around his eyes when he corrects your form. You see the pain when he looks at the scroll on the table, the way his jaw clenches and releases, the way his hands grip his knees too tightly. But you also feel the pull of the new world, the excitement in your teacher's voice, the promise of the future, the sense that you could be part of something larger than the traditions that bind your father. The confusion of honouring the past while being told the past is obsolete sits like a stone in your chest, heavy and cold. Your hands are sore from gripping the bokken. Your legs ache from holding stances that require perfect balance and unwavering focus. But it's a different ache than the one you feel when you see your father's swords resting by the wall. The daisho that marked his status, his honour, his entire identity. Tomorrow those swords become relics. Tomorrow your father becomes something else, something he has no name for yet. Your father dismisses you to prepare for the evening meal. You walk through the house where your grandfather's armour sits in the corner, gathering dust that no one bothers to wipe away anymore. You can smell your mother preparing rice in the kitchen, the familiar scent mingling with the coal smoke drifting in from the street, the old and new worlds meeting in the air you breathe. Your tea house has served samurai families for 3 generations. The building itself remembers, the wooden beams worn smooth by decades of hands, steadying themselves as they entered. The tatami bearing the impressions of countless knees from men who sat in formal seiza position, their backs straight, their movements precise. The wear patterns tell the story of rituals repeated so many times they became part of the structure itself. Today, only 2 customers came, both old men who sat in silence, drinking slowly. They held their cups with the old formality, the precise angle that shows respect for the tea and the person who prepared it, the careful attention to each sip that turns drinking into meditation. You watch their hands weathered, spotted with age, but still moving with the grace they learned as young men. You remember when the house was full every evening. The sound of quiet conversation filled the rooms, voices low and measured, never raised. The rustle of silk as men adjusted their positions, the soft scrape of cups on wooden trays, the particular silence that falls when people are truly present with each other. The room would be warm with body heat, the air thick with the scent of tea, and the subtle perfume of hair oil that samurai use to keep their top knots neat. Now the rooms echo. The space feels too large for the few who still come, and the emptiness is more noticeable than the presence of the 2 old men who sit in the corner. Their voices seemed small in the silence, swallowed by the space that once held dozens of conversations. This afternoon, you cleaned the tatami mats, brushing them in the direction of the weave, the way your mother taught you. Your knees pressed into the familiar texture, the woven rush giving slightly under your weight. Your hands moved in the pattern your mother's hands taught yours. Steady strokes, even pressure, attention to every section. The work is meditation if you approach it correctly. You swept the garden path, the bamboo broom making its soft whisper against stone. Each stroke deliberate, each section cleared completely before moving to the next. You arranged the flowers as your mother taught you, not for decoration, but as a meditation, each stem placed with intention, each angle considered. The arrangement tells a story if you know how to read it. Today's arrangement speaks of autumn, of things ending, of beauty in letting go. The ritual of preparation matters even when fewer people come to see it. Your back aches from kneeling, your hands are rough from the work, but the rooms are perfect, everything in its place, everything is clean and ready. The tea house stands as it should, even if the world outside no longer needs what it offers. The chemical smell of coal smoke from the new factories drifts through your clean cedar-scented rooms. It's a wrong smell, acrid, metallic, nothing like the clean scent of charcoal or wood smoke that used to mark evening's arrival. You open the windows to let it out, but it keeps coming back, seeping through every gap, invading the space you've worked all day to purify. You wonder how long you can keep the house open when the world it serves is disappearing. The rent is due next month, and you have barely enough to cover it. Your daughter wants you to close the tea house and come live with her family in the city, where the new world is being built, where the old ways are already forgotten. But this house is not just a building. It holds your mother's teachings, your grandmother's wisdom, 3 generations of careful attention. You close the shutters as evening falls, the wood sliding into place with the same sound it has made for 50 years. Your hands know every groove in the wood, every place where the grain has worn smooth from decades of opening and closing. The aging samurai sits alone in his room, the official scroll unrolled on the low table before him. The characters are formal, bureaucratic, the Haitōrei Edict of 1876, issued by the Meiji government. The words are simple enough that a child could read them, but their meaning cuts deeper than any blade. Tomorrow, carrying your swords in public becomes illegal. The daisho, the long and short swords that mark your soul, your status, your entire identity, must be surrendered or kept hidden away like shameful secrets. The paired blades you've carried every day since you came of age, the weight on your hip that balanced you as you walked, the constant reminder of who you were and what you stood for. You read the words again, though you memorized them the first time. The law offers compensation, money for your swords, as if they were simply property, as if you could measure their worth in coins. The government will pay you to give up the only thing that made you a samurai. The only thing that separated you from farmers and merchants was. The only thing that gave your life its shape and meaning. The weight of understanding settles over you like a heavy cloak. This is not evolution. This is not your way of life adapting to new times. This is ending, complete and final. The samurai class is being erased by government decree, dissolved by men in Western suits who decided that your traditions are obstacles to progress. You think about the morning's walk through town. The telegraph wires hum their electric song. The young man in his Western suit, clicking past on leather shoes, was too busy to bow. The coal smoke from the railway station mixes with the clean mountain air. The new world doesn't need samurai. The new world has guns and factories and machines that make your lifetime of training obsolete. Your hands rest on either side of the scroll, palms flat against the worn wood of the table. The same table where you've taken your meals for 20 years. The same table where you've cleaned your swords countless times. Where you've meditated on the responsibilities of your station. Where you've taught your son the principles that guided your life. Tomorrow, those principles become history. Tomorrow, you become a man without purpose, carrying the skills of a warrior in a world that has no use for warriors. The government says you can keep your swords at home, can display them as decorations, as reminders of a past that no longer matters. But a sword that cannot be carried is not a sword. It's just metal and wood, beautiful perhaps, but meaningless. You roll the scroll carefully and set it aside. Your movements are precise and controlled, the discipline of a lifetime preventing your hands from shaking, even though your chest feels tight, and your breathing comes in shallow breaths. Tomorrow, the law takes effect. Tonight, you are still a samurai. Tonight, the swords beside you still mean what they have always meant. The aging samurai lifts his katana from its stand, feeling the familiar weight settle into his palms. The blade was made by your grandfather's generation, folded steel that holds your family's honor in every layer. The tsuka, the handle wrapped in ray skin and silk cord, fits your grip perfectly, worn smooth in the exact places where your fingers have rested for 40 years. You perform the ritual cleaning. The movements are automatic after decades of repetition. Rice paper first, wiping the blade from base to tip to remove any moisture or oil that might cause rust. The paper makes a soft whisper against the steel, a sound you've heard 10,000 times. Then the choji oil, applied with careful strokes, forms a thin protective layer that catches the lamplight, making the blade gleam. The scrape of the whetstone comes next. Though the blade needs no sharpening, the edge is perfect, maintained through constant attention, sharp enough to cut through silk dropped across it. But the ritual matters more than necessity. The rhythm of stone against steel creates a meditation, a connection between you and the weapon that defined your life. You examine the harmon, the temper line that runs along the blade's edge, the visible boundary between hard and soft steel. The pattern is unique to this sword, like a fingerprint, created by the clay tempering process your grandfather's smith used. The line curves and waves, beautiful and functional, art and purpose inseparable. The short sword, the wakizashi, rests in your lap, the blade you would use to die with honor if needed. Smaller than the katana, but just as carefully made, just as lovingly maintained. Together, the two swords form the daisho, the paired blades that mark a samurai. One for fighting, one for honor, both essential, both are now forbidden. Tomorrow these become relics, museum pieces, symbols of a past the government wants to forget. The law says you can keep them, but only at home, only as decorations. A sword that cannot be worn is not truly a sword. It's just metal shaped into memory. You think about the first time you wore these blades. 15 years old, the coming-of-age ceremony, where your father presents them to you. The weight on your hip felt strange at first, unbalanced, like you might tip sideways. But within weeks the weight became part of you. Walking without the swords felt wrong, incomplete, like missing a limb. The blades have been with you through everything. Your wedding day, the birth of your son, the death of your father. In every important moment of your adult life, The swords were there, resting at your side, silent witnesses to your existence. They shaped how you walked, how you sat, how you moved through the world. They reminded you of who you were and what you stood for every moment. Tonight, they are still yours, still meaningful, still the physical manifestation of your soul. You set the swords aside carefully, placing them within reach as you prepare for the evening meal. The ritual is complete. The blades are clean and ready. Tomorrow they will rest in their stand, gathering dust, waiting for a purpose that will never come again. You sit in your workshop, the finished blade resting on silk in front of you. The steel is perfect. You can see your reflection in it, distorted and dark against the polished surface. The edge catches the lamplight, a thin line of brightness that runs the length of the blade. You've made hundreds of swords in your 30 years as a smith, but this one feels different. This one feels final. You lift the blade carefully, holding it at an angle where the lamplight reveals the Haman, the temper line that runs along the edge like a frozen wave. The pattern emerged during the clay tempering process. You coated the spine with thick clay, left the edge thin, heated the blade until it glowed, and plunged it into water. The edge cooled faster than the spine, creating different crystal structures in the steel, and where they meet, this line appears. This blade's Haman shows a pattern called gunome, irregular, billowing shapes like clouds or ocean waves, each crest and valley unique. The line is not painted or etched. It is the visible boundary between two types of steel living in the same blade, hard edge and flexible spine working together. You study the pattern in the lamplight, seeing how it catches and reflects, how the crystalline structure creates subtle colour variations, from silver to grey to almost blue. Your father taught you to read a blade's Haman, the way some men read books. Each pattern tells you about the clay application, the heating temperature, the angle of entry into the quenching water, and the smith's hand guiding every decision. A straight line means one approach, irregular waves mean another. The pattern is not decoration, it is the signature of the process, the visible proof of transformation. You remember the moment you quenched this blade, just hours ago, the steel glowing yellow-white in the dim workshop, the heat radiating against your face, the careful lift from the forge, the blade held level, your hands steady despite knowing this might be the last time. The moment of commitment when you angle the edge down and lower it into the water, the explosive hiss and steam, the blade singing as the steel transforms, the sound like nothing else in the world, sharp and pure and final. The water in the quenching tank is still now, the surface perfectly calm. But you can smell it, that particular mineral scent of water that has received hot steel, slightly metallic, slightly bitter. The tank sits in the corner where it has always sat, the wooden sides dark with age, the metal rim worn smooth from your hands, gripping it thousands of times. Tomorrow, that water will grow stagnant. Tomorrow, no blade will break its surface with that explosive transformation. You set the blade down gently and turn your attention to the forge itself. The stones are completely cold now. You place both palms against them and feel nothing but the chill of evening. These stones have held fire every day for 30 years. They know heat better than cold, have spent more time glowing than dark. The residual warmth that usually lingers until late evening is gone. The forge has released its final heat into the night air. You run your hand along the edge of the forge, feeling the stone's texture. The surface is rough and pitted from decades of extreme temperature changes, from the expansion and contraction of heating and cooling. Day after day, year after year, the stones are scarred like your hands, marked by the work, shaped by the fire, bearing witness to everything created here. The bellows sit beside the forge, the leather cracked and stained. You pump them once out of habit and hear the wheeze of air moving through the mechanism. The sound is familiar and comforting, the breath of the forge, the wind that fed the fire. But tonight, the air goes nowhere, pushes into cold coals that will never glow again. The bellows exhale into emptiness. You walk to the water barrel where you quenched your hands after working with hot metal. The water is cold and clean, reflecting the lamplight from above. You dip your hands in and feel the shock of cold against skin that spent the day near fire. The water runs between your fingers, washing away the last traces of coal dust and scale, leaving your hands clean but feeling strangely empty without the tools they've held every day for 3 decades. You remember learning this craft as a boy, your father's hands guiding yours at the forge. You were 8 years old the first time he let you work the bellows, pumping air into the coals until they glowed white hot. The heat on your face was almost unbearable, but you didn't stop. You wanted to prove you could handle it, that you were strong enough to follow in his footsteps. Your father taught you to read the steel by colour, by sound, by the way it moved under the hammer. He taught you that making a sword is not just a craft, it's a conversation with the metal, a relationship that requires patience and respect. The steel tells you when it's ready. The steel shows you what it wants to become. Your job is to listen, to pay attention, to help the blade emerge from the raw material. The generations of knowledge flow through your hands with each strike of the hammer. Your grandfather taught your father taught you. The techniques passed down through centuries of smiths who understood that a sword carries more than an edge. It carries the spirit of its maker, the honour of its bearer, the history of everyone who touched it. This blade will never be carried by a samurai. It was born into a world that has no use for it. You made it anyway, because your hands needed to remember one more time what they were trained to do, because stopping would mean accepting that your craft is finished, that the knowledge you carry will die with you. You think about the factory where your apprentice works now, making nails by the thousand. Each nail is identical to the last, perfect uniformity, perfect efficiency. The factory produces more in a day than you could make in a year. The math is simple. The conclusion is obvious. Hand-forged blades cannot compete with the efficiency of machine-made blades, but the factory nails have no soul. They serve their function and nothing more. They hold boards together, and that is the end of their story. A sword, a true sword, made with attention and skill and respect for the craft, carries something beyond function. It carries the spirit of its creation, the intention of its maker, the potential for honour or dishonour in how it's used. You wrap the blade carefully in silk, the fabric soft against the steel. You place it on the shelf with the others you've made in recent years. Unclaimed blades, unneeded blades, beautiful weapons waiting for warriors who will never come. The workshop feels empty now, though nothing has changed. The tools hang in their places on the wall. The anvil sits solid and dark in the corner. The forge stones still hold their heat, but the purpose is gone. The reason for all of this, the decades of training, the knowledge passed down through generations, the careful attention to craft, exists now only as memory. You stand and move toward the door, your legs heavy with more than physical exhaustion. Tomorrow, the forge will be cold. Tomorrow, you'll begin looking for other work that has nothing to do with steel or fire, or the creation of objects that carry souls. Tonight, you are still a swordsmith. Tonight, the blade on the shelf is still perfect, still meaningful, still a testament to everything you know how to do. You kneel at the low table with your father and mother, the food arranged with careful precision before you. Rice in lacquered bowls, still steaming. Miso soup with tofu and wakame, the seaweed dark against the pale broth. Pickled vegetables, arranged by colour. Yellow takuan, red umeboshi, green cucumber. Grilled fish, the skin crispy and golden, the flesh white and flaking. Your mother serves the meal in silence, her movements practiced and graceful. She learned these gestures from her mother, who learned them from hers, the exact angle to hold the serving dish, the precise moment to pour the tea, the way to place each item so the meal becomes a composition, beautiful before it's consumed. Your father's face is composed, but you see the tightness around his eyes that's been there since this morning, since the scroll arrived, since the future became official and unavoidable. His hands rest on his knees, fingers spread, the position he always takes before meals. But tonight his knuckles are white from pressing too hard against his legs. Your mother serves him first, as tradition demands, then you, then herself. She kneels across from your father, her back straight, her face showing nothing. But you notice her hands shake slightly when she lifts her chopsticks. The tremor is small, barely visible, but you see it because you're looking for signs that someone else feels what you feel. This terrible weight of something ending. This confusion about whether to mourn or celebrate. Your father mentions that you will continue your studies at the new school. His voice is steady, carefully controlled, the tone he uses when making important decisions. The school teaches useful things, he says. Mathematics, English, sciences. Things that will help you in the world that's coming. Things that will give you opportunities he never had. His voice is steady, but you hear what he's not saying. That your path will be different from his. That you will not carry swords or follow the code that defined his life. That you will be something he has no name for yet. Something that belongs to the new era instead of the old one. The weight of being the generation that bridges two worlds that cannot touch sits heavily in your chest. You're supposed to honour your father's teachings while embracing the future your teacher describes. You're supposed to remember the old ways while learning the new ones. You're supposed to be both and neither, to carry the past forward into a world that doesn't want it. You eat in silence, the only sound the soft click of chopsticks against bowls. The rice is perfectly cooked, each grain separate and tender. The soup is hot and savoury, the familiar taste of home. But tonight, the food feels like duty rather than comfort, something to be finished rather than enjoyed. After the meal, your father excuses himself to his room. You hear the soft sound of him handling his swords, the familiar ritual of cleaning and care. Your mother begins clearing the dishes, her movements automatic, her face still showing nothing. You sit at the empty table, looking at the space where the scroll rested this morning, feeling the weight of tomorrow pressing down on everything tonight should be. The two old samurai finish their tea and rise slowly, their joints stiff with age. You hear the soft creak of their knees, the careful way they shift their weight before standing. They've been coming to your tea house for years, decades perhaps. You've watched them grow old in these rooms, their backs gradually curving, their hair turning from black to grey to white. They bow to you with the old formality, the gestures precise and meaningful. The depth of the bow is exactly correct for the relationship between the tea house owner and the honoured guest. The duration is exactly right, held for the proper number of heartbeats before they straighten. Every detail matters in the old forms. Every movement carries meaning if you know how to read it. You bow in return, matching their depth and duration, showing the respect their years and station deserve. Your back bends at the exact angle your mother taught you, and your hands rest at the precise position on your thighs. The ritual is so deeply learned that your body performs it without thought. Muscle memory carrying traditions your mind cannot fully articulate. They step into the evening, moving carefully down the path you swept this afternoon. Their backs are straight despite their age, their movements deliberate and controlled. They walk the way samurai have always walked, with awareness, with presence, with the discipline that defined their training. You watch them reach the street and turn toward their homes, two old men in a world that no longer needs what they know. The street is changing around them. New buildings with glass windows stand where traditional houses once stood. Western-style shops display goods in ways that would have seemed garish a decade ago. The telegraph wires cut across the sky above them, humming their electric song. But for this moment, walking down the street in the fading light, the two old men look like they always have, like the world is still theirs. You close the door and begin the evening cleaning, the ritual that prepares the space for tomorrow. Your hands move through tasks you've done 10,000 times, collecting the cups, rinsing them in the basin, and drying them with the soft cloth kept for this purpose, wiping down the low tables where the men sat, removing any trace of their presence, sweeping the tatami one final time. The bamboo broom made its familiar whisper against the woven rush. You move through the empty rooms, extinguishing lamps, your hands knowing every surface in the darkness, the placement of each lamp, the location of each table, the exact number of steps from room to room, all of it memorized through years of the same movements in the same space. You could do this work blind, and nothing would be out of place. The rooms feel larger in the darkness, the emptiness more noticeable without light to fill them. You think about tomorrow, about whether anyone will come, about how long you can continue opening doors that fewer people walk through. The rent is due. Your daughter is waiting for your answer. The new world is calling you to close this place and accept that its time has passed. But tonight the tea house is still perfect, still clean and ready, still holding 3 generations of careful attention in its walls and floors and the worn smoothness of its wooden beams. You lock the door and stand for a moment in the darkness, listening to the silence, feeling the weight of everything this building remembers. The aging samurai sits in meditation, seeking the stillness he was taught to cultivate. Your legs are folded beneath you, your spine straight, your hands resting lightly on your knees. The position is so familiar that your body settles into it without thought. Muscle memory from decades of practice, finding the exact alignment that allows you to sit for hours without discomfort. But the sounds of the evening are wrong. The mechanical clank of the steam engine never stops. That constant rhythm from the harbour that has no place in the world you knew. The whistle of the train in the distance marks hours now instead of temple bells, sharp and piercing, cutting through the evening air with a sound that makes you wince each time you hear it. You remember when the only sounds at night were wind in bamboo, the rustle of leaves that sounded like rain even when the sky was clear. Dogs barking in the distance, their voices carrying across the quiet town. The watchman's wooden clappers, that distinctive tock-tock-tock that announced his presence as he made his rounds. The sound that meant everything was safe. Everything was as it should be. Now the coal smoke carries voices speaking languages you don't understand. Workers at the railway station call to each other in rough Japanese, mixed with English words you've never learned. The clatter of construction as new buildings rise in Western styles, with hard angles and brick rather than the wooden frames and curved roofs that once defined the town's silhouette. You try to focus on your breathing, the technique your teacher taught you when you were young. Count the inhale, hold, count the exhale. Let the breath anchor you in the present moment. Let everything else fall away. But the sounds keep intruding, pulling your attention away from the stillness you're seeking. The steam engine's rhythm is constant and mechanical, nothing like the natural sounds that once marked time. No variation, no pause, just the same chug, chug, chug that continues hour after hour. The sound gets inside your head, becomes part of your heartbeat, and makes it impossible to find the quiet space where meditation lives. The telegraph wires hum even at night. That electric sound you noticed this morning. It's quieter now, but still present. A high-pitched tone that sits just at the edge of hearing. You wouldn't notice it if you weren't listening, but once you hear it, you can't stop hearing it. The sound of the future, humming through wires strung across the sky, carrying messages faster than any horse could run. You open your eyes and look at your swords resting beside you. Their silence is more eloquent than any sound. The blades don't hum with electricity. They don't clank with mechanical rhythm. They simply exist quiet and purposeful, waiting. In their silence you hear everything they've always meant: discipline, honour, the way of the warrior that required no explanation because it was simply how things were. The old world and the new world clash in your ears, fighting for dominance in the evening air. The wind in the bamboo tries to compete with the steam engine's rhythm. The distant bark of a dog gets drowned out by the train's whistle. The natural sounds that used to define night are losing the battle against the mechanical sounds that never sleep, never stop, never rest. You close your eyes again, trying one more time to find stillness, but the sounds won't let you go. They press against you, insistent and unavoidable, announcing that the world has changed. Whether you accept it or not, you stand in your workshop, the forge now completely cold for the first time in 30 years. The stones that held heat all day have released their warmth into the evening air, leaving only the chill of night. You place your palm against the surface where the coals burned this morning and feel nothing, just cold stone, lifeless and still. The tools hang on the wall where they've always hung, hammers of different weights, each one shaped for specific work. The heaviest for breaking down raw steel, the lighter ones for finishing touches. Tongs in various sizes, their jaws worn smooth from gripping hot metal thousands of times. Files and grinding stones, chisels and punches, each tool marked by decades of use, each one an extension of your hands. You remember your father standing in this same spot, his hands teaching yours the rhythm of the work, the way he would heat the steel until it glowed the exact right colour, then pull it from the forge and strike it with confidence, each blow landing precisely where it needed to land. The sound of his hammer was different from yours, deeper, more resonant, the sound of a master who had nothing left to prove. He taught you to listen to the metal, to hear what it had to say. The ring of the hammer against steel changes as the metal cools, the pitch dropping as the temperature falls. You learn to hear those changes, to know exactly when to return the steel to the fire, when to strike again, when to quench. The knowledge lives in your body now, in your ears, in the calluses on your palms that know the weight of every tool without looking. The workshop holds the memory of every blade you've made here. The walls are darkened from decades of smoke and heat. The floor is stained with scale, the black flakes of oxidized steel that fall away during forging, building up over the years into a layer that maps your work. The anvil sits in the corner, its face scarred and pitted from 30 years of hammer strikes, the surface telling the story of every blade that was shaped on it. Tomorrow, you will look for other work, perhaps in one of the new factories, where the skills that matter are speed and endurance, rather than craft and attention. Perhaps in construction, where the city's rapid growth creates constant demand for workers. Perhaps something else entirely, something you cannot imagine yet because it belongs to a world you don't understand. But tonight you stand in the workshop. That was your world. You breathe the familiar smell of cold iron and coal dust. The scents are permanent in this space that it has become part of the walls themselves. Your hands rest at your sides, empty now, missing the weight of hammer and tongs, the tools that gave your life its purpose and shape. You walk to the door and look back one final time. The forge sits dark and silent. The tools wait on the wall for hands that will not return. The anvil stands ready for work that will never come. Everything is in its place. Everything is as it should be, except for the absence of fire, the absence of purpose, the absence of tomorrow. You close the workshop door and walk toward your house, where your wife has prepared the evening meal. Your legs are heavy with exhaustion that goes deeper than muscle and bone. You lie on your futon, unable to sleep, listening to the sounds of the house settling around you. The wooden beams creak softly as the temperature drops, the familiar sounds of night that usually comfort you. But tonight they feel different, weighted with meaning you cannot name. Your father's swords rest in the next room. You can picture them, even through the wall, even in the darkness. The katana and wakizashi in their stand, polished and perfect, waiting for a tomorrow that will change everything. The blades have been part of your life since before you can remember, always there, always present, defining who your father was and what your family meant. Earlier tonight, after the evening meal, you watched your father through the partially open door of his room. He was performing his nightly ritual of sword maintenance, the movements so practiced they seemed almost like meditation. His hands moved with absolute certainty, no wasted motion, no hesitation. He wiped the blade with rice paper, each stroke deliberate and complete. He applied the oil with careful attention, the cloth moving in long, smooth passes that made the steel gleam in the lamplight. But what struck you most was his face. In the flickering light, you saw an expression you'd never seen before. Not sadness exactly, but a kind of tender attention, as if he were saying goodbye to something he loved. His eyes followed the blade's edge with a focus that shut out everything else. His breathing was slow and measured. He looked like a man trying to memorize something he knows he's about to lose. You wanted to go to him, to say something that would make this easier, but you didn't know what words could possibly help. What do you say to a man whose entire identity is being erased by government decree? What comfort can you offer when the law itself declares that everything it stands for is obsolete. So you watched in silence, feeling the weight of being unable to help, unable to change what's coming, unable even to fully understand what he's losing, because you've never lived in the world he's leaving behind. You were born into the transition, into the confusion of two worlds colliding. But your father was born into certainty, into a world where the path was clear and the purpose was understood. You remember a moment from last year, before the edict was announced, when you asked him why the sword training mattered. You were frustrated after a particularly difficult practice session, your arms aching from holding positions that seemed to serve no practical purpose. "Why do I need to learn this?" you asked him. "No one fights with swords anymore. The army uses guns. Even the police carry revolvers now." He looked at you for a long moment before answering, his face thoughtful and patient. "The sword is not about fighting," he said finally. "It is about discipline. It is about learning to face difficulty without complaint, to maintain form even when your body wants to quit, to find the strength to continue when continuation seems impossible." These lessons apply to everything in life, not just combat. At the time you nodded but didn't really understand. The answer seemed like something adults say when they can't admit that what they're teaching has become irrelevant. But tonight, lying in the darkness and thinking about tomorrow, you begin to glimpse what he meant. The sword training wasn't preparing you to fight. It was teaching you how to be in the world with honor and discipline, how to face challenges with composure, how to maintain your center when everything around you is chaos. But if the sword is just a tool for teaching these lessons, couldn't the lessons be taught another way? Couldn't discipline and honor exist without the blades, without the forms, without the whole elaborate structure of the samurai code? Your teacher at school would say yes, that these virtues can be cultivated through education, through service to the nation, through dedication to progress and modernization. Yet watching your father tonight, seeing the care with which he handled his swords, the reverence in every gesture, you wonder if something essential gets lost when you separate the lesson from the form that taught it. The sword isn't just a symbol of discipline, it is the thing that makes discipline real, that gives it weight and substance, that transforms abstract principle into lived experience. You turn on your futon, trying to find a comfortable position, but comfort feels impossible tonight. Your body is restless with the confusion of not knowing who you're supposed to become. Your father's world is ending. Your teacher's world is beginning, and you're caught in between, belonging fully to neither, required to choose, but given no clear way to decide. You think about the school, about the new ideas your teacher presents with such confidence, the diagrams of machines and engines, the maps showing railways spreading across Japan, like veins carrying the nation's future. Your teacher speaks of a world where Japan stands equal with Western powers, where progress and efficiency replace old traditions that hold the country back. He makes it sound exciting and inevitable, right? The future he describes is one where you could be anything: an engineer, a businessman, a government official. The possibilities seem endless in the world he shows you, limited only by your willingness to work hard and embrace change. But you also think about the way your father moves, the grace that comes from a lifetime of discipline, the precision in every gesture, the awareness in every step, the control that makes even simple actions look like art. That grace was earned through decades of training, through practicing forms that most people will never understand, through dedicating his life to a code that gave everything meaning. The honor code you were raised with sites in your chest like something solid and real. The idea that some things matter more than survival, more than comfort, more than success. That's how you live is more important than what you achieve. That duty, loyalty, and respect are not obstacles to progress, but foundations of a life worth living. You are caught between the father who raised you and the world that's calling you forward, between the past that shaped you and the future that promises opportunity, between traditions that feel sacred and progress that feels inevitable. The weight of knowing that whatever you choose, you will lose something irreplaceable presses down on you in the darkness. Your father never had to make this choice. He was born into a world where the path was clear, where being a samurai meant something everyone understood. But you are born at the hinge point, the moment when one world ends and another begins. You have to choose which world to belong to, knowing that choosing means abandoning something precious. You close your eyes and try to find sleep, but the future and the past argue in your mind. Your teacher's voice describing machines and railways, your father's handsair correcting your sword stance, the excitement of new possibilities, the weight of old obligations, the promise of what could be, the loss of what has always been. The futon beneath you is soft and familiar, the blanket warm against the evening chill. But comfort feels impossible tonight, with tomorrow waiting just beyond the darkness, bringing changes no one can stop, slow or soften. The aging samurai performs his final evening ritual, washing his face, his hands, his feet. The cold water is sharp and clean, bringing you fully into this present moment. The basin sits where it has always sat, in the corner of your room near the window. Your hands cup the water, lift it to your face, and feel the shock of cold against your skin. The water runs down your neck, soaking into the collar of your sleeping robe. You arrange your sleeping mat with the same precision you've used for 40 years. The mat goes in the exact spot where it has always gone, aligned with the grain of the wooden floor. The pillow, filled with buckwheat hulls that shift and settle under your head, rests at the proper angle. The blanket is folded and placed within reach, ready to pull over yourself when the night's chill deepens. Your swords rest within reach, positioned exactly as they should be, close enough to grab if danger comes, far enough that you won't knock them over if you rise in darkness. The katana and wakizashi in their stand, the blades clean and oiled, the handles wrapped in silk cord that your hands know better than any other texture. You lie down and feel the tatami beneath you, the familiar texture that has supported your sleep for decades. The woven rush has a particular smell, clean and grassy, mixed with a faint scent of the straw core beneath. Your body knows this surface, has memorized every slight unevenness, every place where the weaving is tighter or looser. Outside, the wind moves through the pine trees, the same sound your ancestors heard. The branches sway and whisper, creating that rushing sound that could almost be water, almost be rain, but is just wind finding its way through needles and bark. For this one night in the darkness, the world sounds almost as it should. The mechanical noises have faded. The steam engine has stopped for the night. Even the telegraph wires have gone quiet. The day's weight, the training, the scroll, the knowledge of ending settles into your bones. Your wrists ache from the sword practice, that deep ache that speaks of decades of the same movements. Your knees remind you of every stance you held today, every moment of perfect balance that required strength you're not sure you still have. Your shoulders carry the exhaustion of holding form, of maintaining discipline, of refusing to let age excuse sloppy technique. You flex your fingers one last time before sleep, feeling the swollen joints, the stiffness that wasn't there 20 years ago. The leather wrapping on your tsuka left its pattern pressed into your palms. You can still feel the texture, even with your eyes closed, even in the darkness. Your father's voice echoes in the quiet. The way of the sword is not about the sword. Tomorrow you will understand what he meant in ways you never wanted to. Across town, the tea house owner lies in her room above the empty tea house, listening to the silence that used to be filled with quiet conversation. Her knees throb with a deep ache from kneeling all day, on the tatami, while serving the two old men, on the wooden floor, while brushing the mats, in the garden, while sweeping the path. The pain is familiar, earned, the price of maintaining perfection in a world that no longer notices. Her hands rest on the blanket, rough from the day's work, still feeling the texture of the tatami she brushed this afternoon. The bamboo broom left blisters on her palms where the handle rubbed against old calluses. Her fingers smell faintly of the flowers she arranged, chrysanthemums and maple leaves, autumn's quiet beauty that no one came to see. She thinks about her mother, about her grandmother, about 3 generations of women who kept this house perfect, even when the world outside stopped caring about perfection. The silence of the empty rooms below presses up through the floorboards. She can feel the space waiting, ready to receive guests who will not come. The tatami she brushed this afternoon will bear no footprints tomorrow. The tea she prepared with such care will grow cold in its container. The flowers she arranged will bloom and fade with no one to appreciate their brief beauty. Her knees will ache again tomorrow when she kneels to prepare rooms that will stay empty. Her hands will grip the broom handle, and the same blisters will form in the same places. The ritual will continue because it must, because stopping would mean accepting that 3 generations of care meant nothing. That beauty witnessed by no one has no value. But tonight her body rests. The ache in her knees settles into something almost comfortable. The pain of honest work honestly done. Her rough hands lie still on the blanket, finally released from the day's careful movements. She closes her eyes and sees her mother's hands folding silk, hears her grandmother's voice, explaining why each detail matters. The teachings live in her body, in the ache and the calluses, and the muscle memory that will not let her forget. In the small house behind the workshop, the swordsmith lies beside his wife, his hands finally still. The calluses are yellow and thick, built up over 30 years of gripping hammer and tongs. The burn scars on his forearms throb slightly in the evening chill. The long white line from misjudged heat. The puckered circle from a coal that popped and landed on bare skin. His palms are stained black in the creases, soot ground so deeply that no washing will ever remove it completely. He can still smell the forge on his skin, coal and iron, and the particular scent of hot metal meeting water. The smell is permanent, lives in his pores, marks him as surely as the scars mark his arms. His shoulders ache from swinging the hammer all day, that same arc repeated hundreds of times, each strike sending vibrations through his bones. His back is sore from bending over the anvil, from the hours of work in the same position, shaping steel that no one will ever carry. The absence of heat feels wrong. For 30 years, his body has known the forge's warmth, has moved through days measured by the rhythm of heating, striking, and quenching. Tonight, the workshop sits cold and dark for the first time. The stones have released their final warmth into the evening air. The bellows are silent. The anvil waits for hammer strikes that will never come. His hands rest at his sides, empty now, missing the weight of the tools that gave his life its shape. The calluses that built up over decades of work will soften without the constant friction of hammer and tongs. The scars will fade. The soot in his skin's creases will eventually wash clean. His body will forget what his mind cannot, that he was a maker of blades, that his hands knew fire and steel, that he could fold metal and create objects with souls. But tonight, his hands are still a smith's hands, still thick with calluses, still stained with soot, still carrying the memory of every blade he ever made, every strike of the hammer, every moment when steel glowed the perfect colour, and his body knew exactly what to do. Tomorrow, he will look for other work. Tonight, he is still what he has always been. The young son lies on his futon, his body caught between two kinds of exhaustion. His arms ache from holding the bokken during this afternoon's practice, from maintaining stances his father corrected again and again. His legs are sore from the precise footwork, from holding positions that require perfect balance. The physical memory of the sword forms lives in his muscles, even as his mind questions their purpose. But his eyes are tired from reading too, from the mathematics textbook he studied this morning, from the English phrases he copied in careful script, from the diagrams of machines and railways his teacher drew on the blackboard. The chalk dust made him sneeze. The Western letters felt strange under his brush, angular and harsh compared to the flowing characters he learned first. His school bag rests in the corner, heavy with books that promise a future his father cannot imagine. His bokken leans against the opposite wall, wooden and familiar, teaching lessons his teacher says are obsolete. Between them he lies in the darkness, his body aching from trying to belong to both worlds at once. He thinks about his father's hands correcting his grip on the bokken this afternoon, the same hands that held his when he was small, that guided him through his first clumsy attempts at the forms, that have never struck him in anger but have demanded perfection in every movement. Those hands are marked by decades of training, scarred and calloused, shaped by the discipline they've maintained since his father was younger than he is now. He thinks about his teacher's hands too, smooth and clean, unmarked by physical labour, holding chalk instead of swords, drawing futures on blackboards instead of practising forms that lead nowhere. Those hands promise opportunity, progress, a world where he could be anything he wants instead of what his birth demands. His body holds both sets of teachings now, the ache from sword practice and the strain from studying, the muscle memory of ancient forms and the new knowledge of modern machines. Tomorrow he will wake carrying both, belonging fully to neither, required to choose but given no clear way to decide. But tonight, in the darkness, all four of you rest in the same stillness. The samurai's wrists ache from a lifetime of holding swords that tomorrow become illegal. The tea house owner's knees throb from kneeling in empty rooms that hold 3 generations of care. The swordsmith's hands are finally still, stained with soot from a forge that will never burn again. The young son's body carries the weight of 2 worlds, his muscles remembering both the old forms and the new lessons. All of you breathing in the same darkness, the last night when the samurai world still exists. The swords still rest beside us sleeping men, their blades clean and perfect, waiting for a tomorrow that will strip them of meaning. The tea houses still hold the memory of formal ceremonies, the tatami bearing the impressions of countless knees, the walls remembering quiet conversations that will never come again. The forges still remember the rhythm of hammer on steel, the stones holding the ghost of heat, the anvils waiting for work that has already ended. The sons still carry their father's teachings in their bodies, the forms practiced until they live in muscle and bone, even as their minds reach toward futures their fathers cannot follow. The wind moves through the pine trees with the same sound it has made for centuries. The tatami mats release their grassy scent into the darkness. The cold water in the washing basin reflects starlight. The buckwheat hulls in the pillows shift and settle under the weight of heads that carry too much knowledge, too much loss, too much awareness of what dawn will bring. Your bodies know rest, even when your minds cannot find it. The ache in your joints, the roughness of your hands, the exhaustion in your muscles, all of it settles into the familiar comforts of futons and blankets, of rooms that have held your sleep for years, of darkness that asks nothing and judges nothing. The hours pass, the night deepens, and in the darkness, 4 people rest in the last moment when the old world still breathes, still matters, still shapes the texture of sleep and the weight of dreams. Tomorrow the law takes effect. Tomorrow the swords must be hidden. Tomorrow the forges stay cold. Tomorrow the tea houses open to empty rooms. Tomorrow the sons choose which world to belong to. But tonight you are still who you have always been. Your hands still know their work. Your bodies still carry the memory of discipline, honour and craft. The pain in your joints is honest pain, earned over decades of attention, of refusing to let standards slip even as the world stopped caring about them. Tonight, the samurai's swords rest within reach, still meaningful, still sacred. The tea house owner's rooms are still perfect, still ready, still holding space for beauty, even when no one comes to witness it. The swordsmith's final blade rests on silk in the dark workshop, its hammer catching starlight through the window, its edge sharp enough to split a hair. The young son's bokken leans against the wall, wooden and patient, waiting for hands that may never lift it again. And in the darkness, the old world takes its final breath, not with drama or violence, but with the quiet exhalation of bodies finally resting after a long day's work, after a lifetime of discipline, after generations of care that the new world will not remember or honour or understand. The wind in the pines, the scent of tatami, the ache in tired joints, the rough texture of calloused hands, the weight of knowledge that tomorrow everything changes. Rest now. Let the day's exhaustion settle into your bones. Let your body remember what it has always known. How to hold a sword, how to fold a cloth, how to strike steel, how to stand between 2 worlds. Tomorrow will demand choices. Tonight, you are simply tired, simply human, simply resting in the last darkness before dawn brings the ending you cannot stop. The old world sleeps, and in sleeping, it releases its hold on the future it cannot shape. The sun rises on March 28, 1876. The Haitōrei Edict becomes law. The aging samurai wakes with his wrists still aching, his knees still stiff, his hands still knowing the exact weight and balance of swords he can no longer carry. He performs his morning ritual, washing, dressing, moving through the forms his body has known for 40 years. But when he reaches for the daisho to wear at his hip, his hand stops. The law is real now. The swords stay on their stand. He walks into the morning feeling the absence, like a missing limb, the unbalanced weight of a body that no longer knows how to move through the world. The tea house owner opens her doors to empty rooms, her knees protesting as she kneels to arrange the space with the same perfection she's maintained for decades. Her rough hands fold the silk cloth, whisk the tea, and turn the bowl so its most beautiful side faces the emptiness where guests once sat. The ritual continues because it must, because her mother's teachings live in her calloused palms and will not let her go, even when the world has moved on. The swordsmith stands in his cold workshop, his hands still stained with yesterday's soot, his body still remembering the rhythm of hammer on steel. The forged stones are completely cold now, will stay cold, will never again hold the fire that gave his life its purpose. His final blade rests on silk, perfect and unneeded, its hamen catching the morning light, its edge sharp enough to cut through everything except the future that has no use for it. The young son walks to school, carrying his bag of books, and the memory of his father's hands correcting his sword grip one final time. His body aches from yesterday's practice, from holding stances that serve no purpose in the world his teacher describes. His mind is full of English phrases and mathematical formulas, and the weight of choosing between the father who raised him and the future that calls him forward. He does not look back at the house where his father's swords now rest in permanent stillness. Some will resist. The Satsuma Rebellion will come next year. Samurai making their last stand at Shiroyama, choosing to die as warriors rather than live as relics. But for most, this morning means quietly accepting what cannot be changed. The swords stay home. The forges grow cold. The tea houses close their doors. The sons choose the future over the past. The world that shaped you is gone. The discipline remains. The honour remains. The ache in your joints and the calluses on your hands and the muscle memory of a lifetime of training. All of it remains, even when the purpose has been stripped away. You walk differently now, unbalanced by the absence of weight at your hip, but you walk with the same attention, the same presence, the same refusal to let standards slip, even when no one is watching. If you found peace in this final night, subscribe for more gentle journeys into history's quiet endings. Rest well, knowing that honour lives in how you face the ending, not in the ending itself. The old world is gone, but what it taught you, discipline, attention, care, lives in your body and cannot be taken by any law.